Hello out there. We're on the air. Happy Friday, everybody. Good morning. Welcome back to the daily Bitcoin journey. Actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. It is Friday. Happy Friday, Letha. Happy Friday to everybody watching on YouTube, on Rumble, and potentially listening later. We got quite the show today. Quite the show. It is Friday. We got some Baileys in the coffee. We got lots to celebrate. Lots to celebrate. I want to start today's show with a video that I saw this morning, actually. And it's pretty, I'll give it a bit of a prelude here, but this is another general, a U.S., I think it's Navy. Let me check here before I get it wrong. Retired Air Force general. So we're going to listen. It's about a 2-minute video here, 3-minute video. I wanted to start the show with this because it fired me up this morning. And it's Friday. It's a good time to get fired up. So let's start the show with this short clip. Mute myself.
I have a question for General Quast, actually. I want your thoughts and opinions on Bitcoin. Like, are you familiar with the technology? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so the things you're being told are true, and so when I think about a kindergartner, it would be that if I have my toy and I want to trade my toy for your toy, I can do that and nobody can mess with us. Okay? Not even the teacher. And so so that's the first thing to understand, is that this is a method of allowing power to be democratized down to the individual level with no limit. And you can trade goods and services without anybody messing with you and without the government reaching in and stealing from you. So that the kindergartner does understand that, and it's powerful. The second component is that we are moving into the digital age. Okay? So when I was in the military, I started the cyber college because we needed, as in the art of war, to understand network warfare. I was with General Flynn in Afghanistan as we used a network to defeat a network. So these principles you're hearing are valid and true as we as a people are trying to throw off the tyranny of a government that is overreached. But we're trying to do it in a way without bloodshed. We're trying to do it in a way without violence. We're trying to do it in a way where we don't have to destroy the whole system. We can transition back to our constitutional foundations and principles, and get those people that have overreached and trying to take power from us to go off into the horizon without any problem. So this is important to listen to because it is about the money, it's about following the money, and it's about protecting our money. So I just applaud everybody for listening and doing your own research, and many of you already have. Those hands that went up, there's one story at a table where had you invested $10,000 in 2009 when it first was invented, you would have over $490 million right now. Okay? And the power of those numbers will not go away with Bitcoin. They will not go away because it cannot be inflated and it cannot be stolen, and it can scale. We have 8 billion people on the planet right now. It can scale when we have 100 billion people on the planet, and it will never violate the principle of democratizing power down to the individual. And this is what God has given us, free will, and that every human being is equally valuable and equally powerful. And this is the way to organize and transform the entire system and pull the rug out from under those people that are trying to steal.
Wow. Wow. I could probably do an hour show today just talking about that 3-minute clip and everything that he said in that clip. And so that's an example of kind of what's going on here. And that is Lieutenant General Stephen Quast. That's that fella's name. He's a retired Air Force general. So listen to this next part. He's a retired Air Force general who has spent his lifetime understanding space and the art of peaceful international affairs and national security strategies. So that's who that guy was. Lieutenant General Stephen Quast. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about another retired U.S. Army general. He was talking about Bitcoin, how if you want to set yourself up for the future, you should be getting into Bitcoin. So we have all of these people, and he was also a national security advisor still. So if you're paying attention to what's going on here in the world, in the USA, with the government, a lot of people think that Bitcoin was created by the government, and I'm in that club. The NSA, I think that that's who created Bitcoin. And within every entity, within every single entity on Earth, entities are just made up of people. Governments are made up of people. Companies are made up of people. That's all they are. They're just organized in a certain structure. But within every entity, there are good people. And there are people like this fella. And there are people who have our best interests in mind, even though that's not the people we see on TV all the time. So you can believe all that or not. It doesn't really matter. This stuff is happening behind the scenes. And if you're paying attention to it, you can set yourself up for what's coming here. And so this show today is going to be focused on everything that Bitcoin is going to change in the world, because it is changing. He talked about a transition there, not a complete flip of the system overnight, not a complete destruction of the system, but a transition to a new system. And there's lots of little bits in there. I think if you have some time today, watch that again a couple times, because there was so much information in there in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with Bitcoin, democratizing the money to the individual level. That's the key to it. Jose says NSA didn't create Bitcoin. I don't know for sure. That's just my guess on it based on what's used within Bitcoin. The SHA-256 algorithm was created by the NSA. And so whether it was the NSA as a whole or a small group of people within the NSA who released it to the world, and once Bitcoin got big enough, they knew that there's no way to stop it. And I don't know how seriously they took it in the early days, whoever could stop it at that point. But I think we're way beyond that now. We're way past that point where anybody could stop Bitcoin. They can do everything they can to try to slow it down, and they have, and they continue to do that, but there's no way for them to stop it now. Rock and roll. Good morning, wonderful Bitcoiners. Any country that doesn't have at least 1 billion in Bitcoin is setting themselves up for financial failure. Good timing with that video. I think the USA knows what they're doing with the Bitcoin. Johnny's in the house. Good morning, Johnny. Rick, smash the likes, please. What a courtesy. What a nice guy. Please. Daniel, good morning. Yeah, rock and roll says you're all wrong. It was Craig Wright. Well, we can officially say that it was not Craig Wright who created Bitcoin. I didn't even have that on my list today to talk about. There's a lot of things to discuss today. Craig Wright did not even make the cut for what we're talking about today. So for those who missed it, Craig Wright was officially proven to be not Satoshi yesterday. Let me get the list up here. So that's a good news, I think, for anybody who cares. I know most people probably in this chat did not believe for a split second that Craig Wright was Satoshi, but there are lots of people who do believe that. And there's lots of people who are getting into BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. I think that's kind of Craig Wright's baby. I don't know. I haven't spent enough time because I really don't give a shit about that. There's one focus that everybody should be on right now, and it's Bitcoin. So it is Friday. We should celebrate a little bit here because yesterday we hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel, which is a pretty big deal. talked about that yesterday too. I was looking forward to that for a very long time. Happened yesterday, and it's the same as Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin hit an all-time high, we know where everything's going. And so we can still celebrate these small wins, but at the same time, we know how far is yet to go with this whole thing. So 1,000 subscribers to the channel. I want to say thank you very much to everybody who has been here every morning in the chat. It's making things very fun for me and easy to get up in the morning, which is exactly what you want. So I think we're spreading the good information out here for anybody who's willing to listen to it. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Also yesterday, a couple things happened. Set up a new Bitcoiner, brand new Bitcoiner. He bought his first Bitcoin. And I was also on a podcast yesterday. My first ever, I've done a lot of podcasts, but I've never been a guest on a podcast before. So that one was done yesterday. I think it was a really good interview. I don't know. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. I'm sure you've heard a lot of things I talked about, but one of the things I went a little bit further into detail was with the 88 Sats project. And this channel is called the 88 Sats Radio. And so I talked about kind of what the 88 Sats project is. So it'll be out, I think, in the next couple of days. I'll be sure to share it on Nostr within the Patreon group. And I'll talk about it on here for anybody who's interested in watching it. So it was a big day. And I think there's going to be a lot of big days to come. I feel like today, for some reason, I don't know, it's March 15th today. There's some sort of meaning there, I guess, with the numbers. But I think that today, something's going to happen today. It's a Friday. It's March the 15th. March is always crazy with the financial stuff and with happenings around the world. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just suspect that it's going to be a big day in the world, whether we recognize it today or not. But something I think will happen today. So that's my guess. Rick says 1,000. Woohoo. It was a pretty big deal. It's funny. Even yesterday. So this is kind of how humans are, human nature is. But it took quite a while. I mean, not forever, but to get to 1,000. And then all of a sudden 1,000 hit. And then it was like within 5 hours, it was like 10,030 subscribers. So not something I pay too close attention to. I never plan on living off of YouTube's income. That's not what I'm here for. I don't think that there's any sort of sense in trying to do that. I think that you can do that. I just think that you have to do it in a way that is ingenuine. And I'm not that kind of person. That's not what I'm here to do. And so we're going to focus on the right things and let things grow as they should. Just like Bitcoin. So let's talk about the metrics here. 13 minutes in. .13 minutes into this thing, we'll get to the metrics. So we are currently block height 834,803. 834,803. If you're transacting on the Bitcoin Layer 1 network, you're paying about 20 sats per VByte. The miner of this one was Antpool. Antpool is just cleaning them up. I'd like to know how many people are within the Antpool mine. So that is the block height, the fees. The price today has dropped 67,757. And one thing to keep in mind with this, I think that this is a good, it's nice to see the price keep going up and hitting different all-time highs. But this is kind of a good reality check for us, because in history within Bitcoin, the price has never gone up, 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 continuously, consistently, up, up, up. There's always down days. And the thing you have to pay attention to is how long are the down days. So we'll see kind of what happens here. I do expect over the weekend, once Friday wraps up today, I think the price will start running up again. But at this point, everything's so early, the price is somewhat irrelevant for most people. Or not for most people, but in reality, the price is fairly irrelevant in fiat. 2003, 1 year ago, you could have purchased one Bitcoin for $24,000, 374. And 4 years ago, imagine this. Imagine buying one Bitcoin for $5,412. Lots changes in 4 years. And that's going to tie in today's show in terms of how we're so focused on day-to-day stuff, but in reality, we should be more focused on what's coming 5 years from now. And that's what we should be skating to where the puck is going. We did a full show on that a little while ago, but that's kind of what we're talking about today. And it's going to be focused on everybody who's here today and who's in Bitcoin, and not only holding Bitcoin, but how you can set yourself up to be very wealthy in the future in terms of Bitcoin. So Moscow time today, $1 will get you 1,473 sats. Here in Canada, the price is still over $90,000, 91,904 in Canada. And the Moose Jaw time, this is wrong. I do remember the number though, because it was 1088. Great number. So the Moose Jaw time today here in Canada, which is the equivalent to the Moscow time, $1 Canadian will get you 1,088 Satoshis. We want that number to go lower. The lower that gets, the more you can buy with your Bitcoin. I also wanted to show something here in terms of the difficulty. So the difficulty, I'm going to take this comment down. Sorry, Rick. This is the difficulty chart for the last 15 years. And for those who might not really understand the difficulty adjustment, it's actually quite simple. With the hash rate, we have to keep in mind that the hash rate is the amount of computing power securing the Bitcoin network. So every time somebody hooks up a Bitcoin mining machine, that adds to the hash rate. Somebody unplugs a miner, that decreases the hash rate. And the more and more people, the higher the hash rate goes, the higher the difficulty adjustment. For obvious reasons, because the more people who are competing for the next block, who are trying to solve that equation, it has to become more difficult if there's more people doing it. So it kind of goes right in line with the hash rate. It's completely dependent on the hash rate. But if you look at in the last year here, it's more than doubled, which is a very strong indication of where everything is right now. Because if you think about it, if you think about what should be happening right now, to me, this signals that the Bitcoin miners out there, people are plugging into the network. They believe that even though the rewards, the block rewards are going to cut in half in a month from now, they believe that the price of Bitcoin is going to be more than enough to cover that drop in revenue. So one way to look at it is like the miners, their main source of revenue. Where was I? I can't complain. The internet here has actually been really good in my 3 or 4 months of doing daily shows, but it does drop out time to time. So what I was talking about there is that, where was I? To me, that suggests that the miners do believe that the Bitcoin price is going to be high enough to cover the drop in revenue. Because if you think about it, the miners, Bitcoin miners out there, their main source of revenue, their only source of revenue is mining Bitcoin. So when that the halving happens, that revenue gets cut in half. So all of their revenues get cut in half, essentially, on average. But their expenses, basically their fixed or their main expenses is utility costs, right, to run the Bitcoin miners. And so those aren't going to cut in half. Those are going to be the exact same, if not more. So usually what we would see right now leading up to a halving is a bunch of miners powering off because they don't think that the revenues will cover the costs of their electricity. But we're actually seeing the opposite of that. We're seeing the hash rate skyrocket. We're seeing the difficulty skyrocket. And that's a very good sign and a very good indication of what's coming, I think, in the next couple months, as they believe anyways. Things could change, obviously, but oh, it is today. Noah, good morning. Says, well, today is the Ides of March. And if you're a believer in that kind of stuff, which I am, I'm not very knowledgeable with it, but I do believe that there are meanings with dates and with numbers and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens, I guess. We're back. Lucas, good morning, my friend. So that is the hash rate. That's what I wanted to show you today. And I think that's all the slides I had today, believe it or not. Do have some news though. Do have a couple pieces of news. And the first one is El Salvador, our favorite country on earth, besides Canada and the US. Actually, I love all countries. There's everybody's good. It's just some shitty government leaders. But anyways, El Salvador, they announced yesterday that they're sending $400 million worth of Bitcoin to a cold wallet that's going to be stored in a vault within their national border. So the cool thing about this is that it was their president, Bukele. He tweeted that. He showed the address of the Bitcoin wallet where this Bitcoin's being held. So it's public. You can go in there, you can verify it. And I do think that this is going to be a big step in terms of other countries adopting Bitcoin, sharing the address with everybody, and then backing their currency with that Bitcoin. That's how I see this playing out. Whether it happens or not, I have no idea. But it would make sense because even with gold, when the currency was backed by gold, we had to put our full trust in the governments and in the banks that they actually had that gold in the vaults. With Bitcoin, we don't need that. All you need is an address. Anybody can look at how much Bitcoin they have. And when they're issuing currency based off of that, I think people will feel a lot more confident in holding their currency. And longer term, if you kind of play this out in your head and what this looks like, one thing that could happen is that a country like El Salvador could start doing this. So they might say that their currency is going to be backed by Bitcoin. They're going to show their Bitcoin balance, issue currency based off of that. And then people like us, like myself, we could actually hold El Salvadorian dollars, whatever they are, pesos probably, in addition to Bitcoin, because you could use El Salvador currency and go back and forth with it. I think that Bitcoin kind of already is that since they made it legal tender, but I think this would be a more, what would I call it? I think people would feel more comfortable doing that. Let's just say that. So instead of holding Canadian dollars, which is backed by nothing, I might hold El Salvadorian dollars, which is backed by Bitcoin. And I could use that to hold its purchasing power because you would have to assume that goes up versus the Canadian dollar that's going down. So something there. And the other cool thing about that was that people were sending donations to the wallet. So Bukele announced the wallet address and people started sending in Bitcoin donations to El Salvador. Pretty cool, I think. Look at this. This is big news. Litecoin Only says, today I'm going Bitcoin only from now on. Well, make sure you keep a few Litecoin. I'm sure you will. But make sure you keep a few Litecoin. I do believe that Litecoin will have a future somewhere, somehow. Apparently, it's being used in a couple different industries right now just because the transaction fees are so low. And it's pretty cheap too. One thing you have to consider with Litecoin, and I'm not going to be an advocate for it by any means, but one thing you have to know about Litecoin is that it's basically the exact same as Bitcoin. It has 4x the supply of it. So with Bitcoin, there's 21 million supply. With Litecoin, there's 84 million total supply. And the price, if you look at the difference in price, obviously Litecoin's like less than $100. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to be just keeping a couple Litecoin in your pocket, just in case. I think that's a pretty safe, not so much a lottery ticket, but just kind of like a nice to have thing. I do think that the best asset that you can hold without even the second best in the next year and a half is going to be Bitcoin. So Jose says the fees aren't as low as Lightning. I said this yesterday on the show. I'm pretty sure Litecoin runs on Lightning, the Lightning network, but somebody in the comments said that was wrong. So don't trust me. verify that for yourself. But I've sent Litecoin before, and it's like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny to send. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of depends, I guess, on what service who your Lightning service provider is. Because I sent a Lightning transaction yesterday for 15,000 sats, and it cost me 56 sats on Phoenix. So it does depend. Not all the fees are equal ever, especially in Lightning. So there you have it, folks. There's your Litecoin update of the day. This is going to be called the Daily Litecoin Journey soon. Oh, almost choked. It's tough to be live sometimes, but that's okay. We're here. Next thing here that I wanted to share was that the March volume of Bitcoin has already beat February and January's volume. So we're halfway through March, and the volume Bitcoin going back and forth has already beat February and January, I think by quite a bit. So things are definitely ramping up in terms of the volume of Bitcoin, which is always a pretty important metric to pay attention to as well. So all good signs. Even though the price dropped today, if you could watch those 25 minutes and not be excited about Bitcoin, I think you might be in the wrong spot. Rick says he thinks the BitPay Litecoin is the most used crypto. I do know that there are lots of countries, I shouldn't say lots, but there are a few countries who are really adopting Litecoin as a currency of exchange. That's kind of what it was designed to be, I think, a medium of exchange, whereas Bitcoin would be a store of value. And I do think that there's something there, honestly. Not today, but in 10 or 15 years from now, I do think that could be a scenario. I don't foresee a future where we're using one currency only. I think that all countries' currencies are going to be backed by Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean that people are going to be sending Bitcoin back and forth. I don't think that most of the world will even own a UTXO, in fact. And kind of the logic there for me is that it just, if you think about our current world, and I love comparing Bitcoin to real estate because it's kind of the same thing in a sense. It's very scarce. The people who are there early are going to be rewarded the most for it. But it's the same thing if you think about people coming over to North America, settling into North America. They bought very cheap land. And as more and more people showed up, they were able to sell that land for more money and get the best land. So even today, after hundreds of whatever X amount of years, not everybody owns a house. Not everybody owns a hotel. It's the same kind of thing. And I don't think in the future, everybody will actually own Bitcoin. Everybody uses it, but not everybody has the same ownership today. So that's just kind of one analogy to look at it, but I don't think that it's just not feasible for everybody to own a Bitcoin UTXO. So if you are here watching the show and you have a UTXO, make sure you hold on to that forever and protect that with your life. That's what I will say. Okay, so let's get into what I was about to talk about today. I really have no idea how long this show is going to be. I'm in no huge rush, so hopefully you guys are okay with just hanging around for a while. But yesterday I talked about spending Bitcoin, and there's a question in the chat. I think it was from Pomp, and he asked, "Have I ever spent any, or have I sold any of my Bitcoin before?" And I said, I've never sold it, but I've spent it before. And that's something that I have been doing is just holding all of my monthly expenses in Bitcoin. And as I need to pay for things, I just swap it within the ShakePay wallet to dollars. And that's how I pay for things. And so just taking that a step further, it's the money that I would have otherwise spent. So I don't think that that's considered spending Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin. It's just putting the money that you do have that you plan on spending on living expenses into Bitcoin and using that. It's not like I'm selling Bitcoin for fiat. I'm not transferring $2 million or 2 million sats to ShakePay, cashing that in just so I can have a nice balance in my checking account for a little while. I would never do that. It's nonsense. Or even to buy stupid shit that you don't need. The one thing that Bitcoin does is it really changes your perspective on needs versus wants. It's something that we learned growing up, but I think Bitcoin is a real effective way to manage that. And so with that, it's like just instead of, we're so used to a world where as soon as you get the cash, you feel like you have to spend it. And I've been in that world. I spent 31 years in that world where you get paid and you spend it. You maybe save a little bit there, but over time, nowadays, that doesn't add up to shit. There was a time where you could actually put some money away and then you could buy something with it, but not anymore. And so everybody's kind of in this mentality where you earn money and you spend it basically as soon as you get it. So you kind of have to look at, in terms of selling your Bitcoin and spending your Bitcoin, the one thing I would say is you really have to look at your current circumstances. So if you have some Bitcoin and you have debt, depending on what kind of debt that is, you have to consider what you'd be spending your Bitcoin on. So for an example, if you have like a mortgage or a line of credit, anything like that with like kind of a low interest rate, instead of selling Bitcoin to pay off that loan, just hold on to it, because we've seen year over year, the average return on Bitcoin is about 50% a year average. And if you compare that to your current interest rate, which is probably what, 5, 6, 7% on a mortgage or a line of credit, there's a big variance there. So I think that it's foolish to be selling that Bitcoin to pay down debt when you could just hold on to it and kind of outweigh the debt. So that's kind of my advice on that. And in terms of like a credit card though, if you're paying like 22% a month on a credit card, I would definitely sell the Bitcoin to pay off the credit card. That's what I would say. Maybe not this. Yeah, I would actually, because that accrues fast. So that's kind of my advice in terms of selling Bitcoin. And like I said, it is a totally different way of looking at things. And Bitcoin is going to change the way we deal with money, the way we think about money, and the way that everything runs in the world. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today a little bit. And I'm kind of curious, as I'm talking about this stuff, I would love for anybody in the chat to kind of throw out a few different industries. I have a few here that I want to talk about, but if you have an industry, whether that's something that you're in or just something that pops into your head, maybe just throw it in the chat and we can kind of talk through what it'll look like in 5 or 10 years from now with Bitcoin as the main currency instead of the fiat world that we live in. So the idea here isn't so much to get everybody excited about Bitcoin. The idea here is that we should be looking at this in a much different way, other than simply just buying Bitcoin and holding on to it. That's good. I mean, that's a really good first step. But I think if you really want to take advantage of this, what I believe to be a once in a millennium type of opportunity, you have to set yourself up for what's coming here. So Bitcoin is going from a very niche industry. If you look at the total market cap in Bitcoin compared to worldwide assets, it's very small. So we're moving from a niche industry into a very mainstream industry. And when that happens, everybody who's associated with Bitcoin, not only owning it, but if you have a business that accepts Bitcoin, if you're earning some sort of Bitcoin on a recurring basis, you're going to be part of that wave. The tide is going to rise, all the boats, all the ships are going to rise with it. So ownership is great, but if you can attach yourself to some sort of business or venture or investment fund, anything that associates with Bitcoin, it's going to rise with it. So if you can get ahead of it now, you're going to be setting yourself for a very good future. So the first thing I want to talk about here is actually the AI stuff. And I think that this is something that's not on a lot of people's radar in terms of Bitcoin stuff. So with AI, I think everybody knows it's going to change things in the world. But I don't think most people comprehend the fact that the currency of AI, what AIs are going to be accepting for currency, is going to be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the currency of the internet. It's much more than that, but that's one aspect of it. And so these AI bots are going to be accepting Bitcoin, and they're going to be doing jobs for you, for me, for everybody. They're going to be doing the tasks that you would otherwise hire like a graphic designer to do, an assistant to do, anybody. They're going to be doing those tasks, and you're going to be paying them in Bitcoin for that. So with that in mind, if you think about the leverage that you're going to have in the future, if you're holding Bitcoin right now and you're going to hang on to that Bitcoin while this transition happens, think about how much leverage you're going to have in terms of not only hiring people who want to accept Bitcoin, but also hiring bots. So there's already websites, and this is something I'm going to talk about in the coming weeks on the Living in the Future segment. But there's basically a vending machine for AI bots. So basically you go to the website, you fund a wallet, your Lightning wallet, and you can type in a job that you want done. And these AI bots will actually bid on that. And the lowest, I guess the cheapest bid that's accepted, that's who's going to do the job. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to do a couple tests on that. I'm going to show everybody how to do that. And I think that at this point, it's just fun to be playing around with it and finding ways where it can actually improve your life. So think about that leverage that you're going to hold in the future. Say that Bitcoin does work out, and all of a sudden Bitcoin's 1-to-1 with the dollar. Think about how much leverage you're going to have in terms of hiring these AI bots. So that's one. A graphic design would be an easy one, I think, where you can type in a prompt, say, I want this artwork generated. You pay the AI bot like 10 sats or 20 sats, and it's done. In the current system, you'd have to hire somebody to do that. And I do think that we're still in the transition where actually the graphic designers who are getting ahead of this can really take advantage of this time, where they can charge a human, say $100 for it. They can get some Bitcoin. They can pay an AI bot 50 sats for it. And you see the spread there. They're doing less work. They're paying a bot to do that, and they're winning that. Mostly because the general population is going to take a very long time to figure this out. So there is going to be some arbitrage that happens over the coming years where these industries are actually using AI, charging human rates, but using AI and taking advantage of that spread, which is pretty interesting. At the same time, another thing I think that these AI bots are going to change is lawyers. I do think that lawyers will exist in the future. I just think that their jobs will look much differently, and the services that they provide to people are going to be much differently. So an example of that is if I wanted a contract done up, I could use this website. I could fund my wallet. I could say the prompt, I need a contract done up for X and this, and they'll do up that contract for me. Of course, it's not going to be up to par yet with an actual lawyer doing it. But I think for the most part, the average person doesn't really need that anymore. So instead of paying a lawyer $1,000 to write you up a contract, you pay an AI bot 1,000 sats for that. And that's what really excites me, is that $1,000 now versus 1,000 sats today, there's a big spread there still. As we move forward, as this transition continues to happen, that spread is just going to continue to shrink. And so if you are thinking about this stuff now, if you are setting yourself up for this now, there's a few years here where you can really take advantage of that and a huge arbitrage on that. So with lawyers, and another example of what I think Bitcoin's going to do in terms of flipping everything on its head is real estate stuff. So if you think about how a real estate transaction would work today in this current system, I'm buying a house from you. We have a realtor there. They show us the house. They do their selling there. They post everything online. But when it actually comes to making the payment for the house, if I wanted to send you the money for the house, what does that look like right now? Well, the lawyers connect that. So they get in touch with my bank. They say, I need a wire transfer of $100,000. They set us up with a loan as well. And the lawyer holds that money in trust on your behalf because the person doesn't really trust that you're just going to send them the money and everything's going to be good. So that's the current system. The lawyers hold that amount in trust. That's their job. With Bitcoin on the layer 1 network, I do think this is going to be a future use of the layer 1 network, is I would just send that Bitcoin to you. It would arrive there in 30 minutes. And there's absolutely nothing that I could do to try to reverse that transaction, right? So Bitcoin layer 1 transactions are going to replace bank wires eventually. And so lawyers kind of get cut out of that deal as well. I think the realtors, not much will change in the real estate industry. I think that there's still going to be a need for people showing houses, posting houses, all that kind of stuff. Similar to how the internet was with Bitcoin or with realtors. It didn't make them obsolete. It actually helped them out. And I do think that if there are realtors out there who want to take advantage of this time, this is a time where you could start setting yourself up to be the Bitcoin real estate agent, where you're connecting Bitcoiners who are looking to sell houses for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners who are looking to buy a house with Bitcoin. And so you connect those two. Instead of paying X amount of fees to every person involved, you just take a small sliver of that Bitcoin transaction, and that's your job. And I think that there's probably already people within North America who are kind of setting themselves up for that now, or already doing that. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of need for that in the coming years. And if you're on Nostr right now, that would be the perfect place to be positioning yourself as a Bitcoin real estate agent, and you start connecting with people on Nostr, and then you're the connector there. So I think that's very possible. It would take $0 to do that, to start setting yourself up for the future. Advisory, financial advisors. Currently, if you look at the role of a financial advisor today, it is they manage their client's wealth. They make some trades based on what they think is going to be best for their client. And they take a fee off of every trade, every transaction that happens there. Plus they take a fee on the management of those assets. So I do think that they'll be around for a while, as long as some of these legacy investments stick around. But I think in the future, the advisors, a real advisory role in terms of managing wealth, is going to be managing people's Bitcoin. So you're going to find an advisor, a Bitcoin advisor. They're going to be asking where the Bitcoin is, what wallets you have, how you plan on spending that in the future, and how you plan on passing that on to your family in the future. All of these things, there's going to be a huge need for this in the future. And so you're going to be managing their main stack of Bitcoin and how they plan on spending that. You're going to be optimizing how they can hold it, whether that's in a Phoenix wallet or a desktop wallet, whatever that may be. You're going to be the person who's responsible for advising them on how to best transact with that Bitcoin to save the most amount of fees possible. So if you're a Bitcoiner and if you have some sort of financial knowledge, this is something that you could be starting to look into a little bit and starting to explore and finding how you could add value to people, to Bitcoiners or new Bitcoiners, I guess, because even though a lot of people are going to be getting into Bitcoin, even though a lot of people already have, there's so much of a spread there between what people, basically, you don't know what you don't know in Bitcoin. I think that's the best way to put it. So you don't know what you don't know. You bought some Bitcoin, it's in a wallet, but there's 20 other layers on top of that you need to be prepared for, that you have no idea that you need to be prepared for. So that's the kind of advisory service I think is going to be in high demand over these next 5 or 10 years. So I'm going to be checking out the chat here. I see some comments. I didn't want to get off my train of thought there. Kira said, had an awful morning with liquidation on a long position with 0.1, 10 million sats of a Bitcoin. Ooh, that's tough. I can't say that that's something that I do personally. I don't do shorts. I don't do longs. I just buy Bitcoin and figure out the best way to spend that Bitcoin eventually. It's pretty easy. That's the nice thing about it too, is you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. You just buy it, you forget about it, and you figure out how to make more of it. But that is shitty, Kira. I'm sorry to hear that. Johnny says, I wonder what Bitcoin will do to the corrupt insurance companies. I think that's there's a lot there, and I think that we could probably do a whole show on that. Maybe I will do a show on that in the future, because I think that it is going to change the entire insurance company, how it all works. Bitcoin's going to change everything. And one example, I forget where I heard this the other day, but everybody's going to have their own Lightning wallet, right? They're going to have their little email address. It looks like a Lightning, or it is a Lightning address, looks like an email address. And I think that there's going to be so much competition for people who get into Bitcoin early, and they're actually going to be able to leverage it, like I've said throughout this whole show. So if you start an insurance company, or your insurance company starts embracing Bitcoin, you can actually set up ways to entice people to come to your firm. Let's say an example of you don't have any water damage in your house. You've been paying house insurance for 10 years. You've never had any claims. The insurance companies who embrace Bitcoin can actually start using this as an incentive for people. So if you go a whole year without any claims, we'll send you 1 million sats or 100,000 sats. And as word spreads, as people want Bitcoin more and more, the insurance companies who are there first, who are doing that first, are going to be the ones who win. And everything's going to change based on their business model around Bitcoin. And that's just an example. I think that everything will kind of do the same as that in different industries. Okay, so Daniel says, the thing is, if the best estate planner in the world trained an AI to do estate planning, that AI would immediately be better than almost every other estate planner. Probably. From what I understand of AI, and I do not claim to be an expert on it, but from what I understand of it, it's actually going to be, currently it's smarter than a human. In about 5 years from now, AI is going to be smarter than every human combined. This stuff is moving very fast right now. And so even thinking about that, if the best estate planner trained an AI to do estate planning, they would make themselves essentially obsolete. And yes, I do agree with that. But at the same time, you still have to have a human there who is the marketing department, the face of that company. Because until people can actually figure out how to use the AI tools, they're actually going to have to go through a human first. And so if you build your business around AI, people come to you because you can offer a much cheaper rate, because you're not doing humans to do this anymore. Instead of paying humans $200 an hour to do this, you're paying an AI 200 sats to do a plan. And I think just even saying that out loud shows how much this is going to change everything, AI and Bitcoin. So yes, and that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about here, is if an estate planner could realize that right now, they could set themselves up perfectly to be the most competitive. They'll still be the face of it. They're using AI to do all the work that they used to do. And now they're just focused on marketing the company and building relationships, being that human face that people need, right? And they would still obviously have to spend a few hours or few minutes reviewing the AI to make sure that it's legitimate, and then sending it out. So even though I do think that it's scary to think about that, it's just going to be a huge plus for humans. Litecoin only says, is the Bitcoin ETF good to invest in or hold actual Bitcoin in self-custody? I'm having a hard time keeping up with the chat here. This is like another Thursday Q&A session. So it really depends, I would say, in terms of the ETF versus self-custody. The one thing I would say is that if you're somebody who's trying to decide between those two, definitely get the self-custody first. Definitely get the self-custody first, and then figure out what you're doing after that. I think the Bitcoin ETF will be perfect for people who have a lot of capital in the old system, in your pension, retirement fund. That's a very easy way to swap it out into a Bitcoin ETF, getting price exposure to Bitcoin without having to pay the fees and taxes to cash all those out. So it really depends on where you're at, where your money's at, and what you want to do in the future. So a little bit of both, I think, depending on what your needs are. Definitely self-custody though, because even with the ETF, you're trusting somebody else to hold that for you. And the whole point of Bitcoin is that we want to get rid of that trust. So definitely get a stack of Bitcoin in self-custody, figure out how to do that first, and then explore the ETFs. And on that note, I should mention this because I've had a couple people reach out in the last couple weeks. I think the majority of people right now do have financial advisors, and they're looking to possibly, sheesh. They're looking to possibly get into Bitcoin, but their financial advisor is not Bitcoin friendly. And so I've had a couple people reach out in the last couple weeks saying, I got an advisor. He's not really on board with what I want to do here in terms of a Bitcoin ETF and cashing some out to buy Bitcoin. So if that's you, if you're in that position where your financial advisor is not Bitcoin friendly, shoot me an email, 88sats@proton.me, or find a way to get a hold of me. But it's 88sats@proton.me. And I do have two guys who are financial advisors, very Bitcoin friendly, and would be happy to assist you with transitioning that money from the old system into Bitcoin. Crowd health. Yes, I was going to mention that. That's kind of the health insurance model that's really changing the whole health industry. So let's dive into that quickly. Jose says, rather than paying $200 per month in medical insurance, $200 auto insurance, people will simply save Bitcoin and went, okay, that's a different way to look at it too. I love that approach, honestly. Jose says, rather than paying $200 in medical insurance every month, $200 in auto insurance, all the different insurances that you pay every month, people will simply save Bitcoin. And when unexpected expenses arise, people will be prepared with the greatest money in world history. Yes. And not only for insurance, but I think people will start doing that in every different aspect of their life, whether they need new tires on their vehicle, whether they need to replace their deck, their roof. If you're somebody who owns a house, you know that every 10 or 15, 20 years, you're going to have to replace that roof. Instead of waiting for that to happen, why not start putting $100 a month into a Bitcoin wallet? And when that time comes in 10 or 15 years from now, you have that wallet that's specifically dedicated to your roof fund. And who knows what's going to happen in those 10 or 15 years. Maybe you only have to spend 1/10 of your Bitcoin on your new roof, and you have the rest to do whatever you want with it. I just feel like that's a much better strategy in terms of what people currently do, in terms of putting into a savings account or just waiting for it to happen. So lots to consider there. And just going back to the advisory thing there. Going back to the advisory thing in terms of managing your Bitcoin, managing the wallets that you use and how you're spending that Bitcoin. I was listening to an interview yesterday and they were talking about the Lightning wallet, Phoenix. And they said that Phoenix is the best wallet in terms of a Lightning wallet that you can actually hold the keys to. So that's what we were talking about earlier in the week, was the Phoenix wallet. But there is a fee. There's a 10,000 sat fee to set up a wallet, to set up your Lightning channel. And they were kind of talking about how used to everybody is in this current system of getting everything for free. So that's another kind of mindset shift that you're going to have to make on your own, that you're going to have to pay for some of this stuff. If you want the privacy, if you want this censorship resistant aspect of the world, you are going to have to pay a little bit for that. Because the one thing that the old system has done for years, they've been really good at hiding the fees on things. So even with credit cards, you make a purchase at the store on your credit card, you think that it's free to do. But who's paying for that? The business. The business owner pays about 2 or 3% or more in merchant fees every year. And so when they're paying 2 or 3% in merchant fees, their margins get lower. And when their margins get lower, they have to charge more for their products and services, right? So they do a really good job of hiding the fees in the current system. So it's the same kind of thing. If you want to set yourself up in this system, you are going to have to pay a little bit, but it's just going to be more transparent than the old system. You're still paying, but you just don't know that you're paying for it. Inflation is the biggest fee that nobody knows they're paying. And it's the same thing with social media, with your data, right? We got so used to getting everything for free. You set up an account on Twitter, it's free. Set up an account on Facebook, it's free. But they're collecting all of your data. So with this new system, you can actually control all of that data. If you do it properly with your own server, your own relays, you can control your own data, but it costs you more. So that's the whole shift. Everything is a transition. Everything is transitioning. And the better you can be prepared for this, the better off you're going to be in the future. And that was kind of the point of today's show, is not to get you excited about Bitcoin, but to get you ready for Bitcoin. And you should start thinking about this in every aspect that you can, depending on what your industry is, start thinking about how Bitcoin is going to change that industry. And if you're worried about it, if you think that Bitcoin is going to somehow jeopardize your career, your job, or your business, then start adjusting for it today. Don't wait for it to happen. And if you're somebody who, is excited for this and wants to be part of this rise in Bitcoin, then find ways to get ahead of that. Yesterday on this is how I want to end, because I think that there are people who watch this show who do want to get involved in the future with Bitcoin. And on yesterday's Living in the Future show, I talked about an idea that we're going to do. It's a business involving Bitcoin. And the cool thing about that is I talked about the idea and I asked anybody in the Living in the Future tier if they want to be involved in it. And that's going to be the first of many, I think, initiatives that we take. But it's a business idea. I'm looking for some people to help me out with it. We're all going to have different roles, different jobs, and all of the income that's generated from this business is going to be split equally. And you're going to be rewarded for finding people, finder's fees, like a commission on finding people. And I think that it's a really good way to do it. And I think that's what the future is going to look like, is instead of me hiring people and me getting the majority of the profits from that business, you start a business with like-minded people. Everybody knows their role and all the profits are split equally. And so that's what we're going to do. It's going to be an experiment. We're going to find X amount of people, depending on how many roles we need within this business. And we're going to try it. It's not something that we're going to do full time. It's going to do something that we dedicate a couple hours to every week. And we're going to earn Bitcoin that way. So it's pretty cool. And, the nice thing about that is that it isn't going to be our main source of income. It's just going to be another revenue source of Bitcoin that we're willing to take a little bit less in terms of fiat dollars today, but we're getting ready for the future. So if you are somebody who is interested possibly in being a part of that, or if you're looking for new ways to start earning Bitcoin on a weekly, monthly basis, make sure to check that out. Make sure to check that out, because within that tier, we're learning to be better Bitcoiners, but we're also going to start building different businesses and taking on initiatives to do with Bitcoin. And the people who are in that tier are going to be the ones who are part of that. Everything's going to be voluntary. Everything's going to be decentralized, and everything's going to work like a charm. It's going to happen. I just know it. So if that sounds like, if you're interested in that, you can click the description, Living in the Future, sign up for a free trial, check out some videos. If you like it, you can pay $5 a month for it. I think that the idea here, and kind of how I see this playing out for that tier, is that people are going to pay to be a member there, $5 a month. Very reasonable. I wanted people in there, but they're going to make more money just by being in there. Taking on different initiatives like this, they're going to earn more in Bitcoin every month than they pay in dollars to be part of that. So that's the end goal for that. So set yourself up for the future. It is so exciting that we get to be alive during this time in history. There's so much opportunity. You just have to know what you're looking for, and you have to take that drive. You have to have the drive in order to see that. It's one thing to buy Bitcoin. It's one thing to have the guts to give a GFY to the old system, but if you're actually somebody who's going to be building around Bitcoin, you're going to be rewarded the most in the future. So with that, I hope everybody has an amazing Friday, a great weekend. I appreciate everybody very much. And we just got so far to go. We're the train hasn't even left the station here yet with Bitcoin, with this channel, and with what we're building and living in the future. So I appreciate everybody very much. If you don't mind on the way out, check the like, leave a comment. There's going to be some cool things happening within this channel, and different initiatives we're taking on. So leave a comment, anything you like, even if it's just emoji. It helps the channel grow and it helps Bitcoin grow. We want to get Bitcoin in as many hands of the little guy as possible before BlackRock gets it all. So that's what we're doing here. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll see you first thing Monday morning. Bye-bye.